So he's been to two
nurseries, yeah.
And what's your experience been in general? Have you found that they know what they're doing?
So when we went for the original process for the diagnosis, they asked me at the time, had I got him into it? Was he attending a setting? And at the time, he wasn't. He was just turning. We were waiting because we'd obviously moved, and he was going to turn 2. And I was told that from 2 years old, if they do get a diagnosis, you can sometimes get help with funding. Because obviously I weren't working, so it's an extra cost, isn't it? And obviously we were saying, we'd contacted a few places when we first moved to the new area. And obviously, at the time he didn't have a diagnosis, we was on the pathway. And when you sort of mention that to some settings, I always found like some people's, their tone of voice changed. Like something changed in the conversation. It went from very enthusiastic to like dread. It's the best way I can explain it. And that obviously, you can hear that in a tele. You don't have to be standing in front of someone to know that the tone has just changed. So obviously I am aware, like when you say to some people about it, they're like, oh, that's terrible. Like, you should complain. And I'm like, no, because I am aware that a lot of the time it is down to money. It's purely money issues because, if you've got a child who has extra needs, often they need extra support. And if you're paying, whatever the hourly rate is, the truth is that's not going to cover another member of staff. So obviously in the beginning, when they said to me they recommended that he started in a nursery, I was like, you try and find one that will take him. Because we'd already tried at this point, sort of like a year, and had no luck. So obviously at that point, he was now, was he coming up to, so he was 2.5 at that point, and we'd been living in the area a year, and nowhere would take him. So we tried
so they actually said to you...
They just basically said that it was either we don't have any spaces for the hours that I wanted, or they wouldn't be able to meet needs. Wow. Which I think, at least you're honest. It's not what I want to hear, but at least you're honest. So I was on like a few like waiting lists for places, and then there was one that we had originally had tried when we first moved there, and it was close by, and another parent at the school said, oh, I'm sure there was a sign on their door saying spaces for 2-year-olds. So we contacted them, and and I was quite upfront, and I said, look, don't waste my time. I don't want to waste your time. This is the experience we've had so far this past year in this area. If you're in that position, just be honest and tell me, because I don't want to get my hopes up.
Yeah.
So they were like, no, come in for a meeting. They met with us. They were really lovely, and they did offer us, they could at the time only offer us a Tuesday morning for 3 hours. So I took it with arms open because he was with me, and I just thought if it's 3 hours, maybe I could go to Lidl's on those days, because then he won't cry. He won't, could pick up a few bits. So obviously, he started, and in the beginning, he went into a room where there was him and 7 other children. That changed very quickly. They literally dropped it down so that there was him and 4 other children, 2 members of staff. So 1 staff member was just for him, and the other lady did for the other 4, because of the ratios and that. They obviously helped me with the PECs, and they were, on the ball with. I have to say they were on the ball there. They were very supportive, and it was sad that it was only 3 hours. And obviously at the time, the plan was the hours would start to go up. So around his 3rd birthday, obviously at that point we were, 3. Funding, you can title to stuff. We'd obviously done a couple of, I think we'd done one round of the assess, do, review. We was obviously doing the second one, and I did have sort of high hopes. And then Easter came, and they sent out a letter saying that they were financially in trouble. Now, we'd already had a conversation about more hours, and at the time they did say to me, at the moment we can't. So I, at that point, applied for the nurseries going to now, because I knew that they took an intake after Easter. And I was hoping that maybe, you know, if we could get I discussed it with the nursery, and I said, like, you know, that's what I'm going to do. And they were like, yeah, absolutely do that. You know, if they can give you 15 hours, brilliant. So obviously, so then the school came back and said no, that they wouldn't be able to take him from Easter. After Easter, they said they would take him from September, because again, to do with needs, you know, they had quite a lot of children there already with high needs, and they couldn't, couldn't. So I was like, fine, okay. So, you know, it was like, okay, well, we're sort of, I think it was like March, you know, we've got to get to July, and then he'd get 15 hours. And if this nursery was like, if they could give me more hours, I would have absolutely taken it. And then over the Easter holidays, that's when we got the letter saying financial difficulties, that basically after Easter, he could only go for another week, because they had to start shutting rooms down because of staffing issues. Again, because of money in it, because they couldn't, you know, paying minimum wage and whatever. So, yeah. That week that he was supposed to go after Easter, he got chicken pox with everyone else. So he didn't get that last week. He didn't understand. You know, every day we'd go on the school run, and what we used to do is we'd do the school run, drop Scarlett off, and they had a second gate, and I used to walk out that gate to go to the other nursery. So every day he tried to go to that gate, and obviously every day I'd walk away from that gate, and every day we had tears, because he didn't understand Tuesday was Tuesday, and, you know, there was no more nursery. So we had that from April till July, every day on the school run, every day. Wow. And I rang other places. I was desperate. Because I was desperate, because I just thought, you know, how do we do this for the next however long? And one place I rang on a Monday or Tuesday, and then I went to an assembly at Scarlett School on a Friday to be told that they closed down on the Thursday. Yet on the day I rang them, they was like, yeah, we'll get someone to call you back. And apparently on the Thursday night, they put a sign on the door for the parents to pick up saying, as of tonight, we are closed due to funding issues. This was around the time that the government as well announced all the, you know, the extra hours from younger. So obviously, already issues with funding anyway, and now the government's new 3 hours, which we all know are not 3 hours. I reckon there'll be lots and lots more, because in that time between April and July, 3 nurseries by us closed. And the thing is, that meant then all those parents were looking for other places, and I suppose, you know, for when you compare us to the next family, their children didn't have needs, they're going to get the place. Whereas Grayson did have additional needs, we're not going to get the place. So, so when we had an appointment with the school nursery in September to discuss whether it was the right setting. So at that point, I still didn't know I was going to have this setting, and we went, and it all seemed quite promising. Obviously got the place, and we started. Experience-wise between the two, very different. I don't know if it's because they're a school nursery. I don't know if it's that they've not come across a lot of children like Grayson. I find communication really poor, which is frustrating for me as a parent, because Grayson doesn't talk, doesn't come out and say to me, oh, today we did this. So I rely on the information they give me, and if they're not giving me information and Grayson comes home unsettled, you know, faults. You start to become quite paranoid. You can only go by how he is. So at pick-up time, he happily comes out. At the old nursery, he used to cry at pick-up time. He didn't want to leave.
Oh, okay.
This one, he says goodbye to them. And he's getting out the gate.
So has he got a homeschool book?
He has. He's got, It's not really used. I tried to chase a lot of conversations up through the parent app. We originally asked for a home communication book, and they weren't very keen on it. Then they said they would look into it.
Non-verbal. non-verbal, pre-verbal child, they weren't keen on doing a book.
No.
What was their reason? Sorry?
Because they had lots of other children to care for. So obviously, yeah, so in the beginning there were conversations within the first week that, you know, were quite negative towards Grayson, but actually when you picked away at that you know, those things said, it wasn't a case that it was that negative. It was actually misunderstanding, and it was because Grayson didn't understand what they wanted. So we had an incident on the very first day he went, you know, he went in happy. I don't know if he was generally happy. I don't know if he understood what was happening. But on pick-up time, they basically, you know, there's me standing there thinking I'm going to get some sort of feedback because it's your first day. And I just stood there like a lemon, waiting, you know, with my child that they've handed over.
They handed him
over and nothing was said. And then obviously I was like, you know, I just wanted to know how his first day went. So, so basically I was told he, you know, there was an incident of him climbing and sitting on other children. And obviously, granted, Grayson is bigger than other children his age. Not, you know, he's taller. You know, he's 3 going on 7. You know, he doesn't look like a 3-year-old. Most people think he's about 5 or 6 because he is so tall. Wow. So obviously, yeah, I can imagine if he sat on a child that's smaller than him, it's not the best. But obviously, you know, it was quite a negative bit of feedback for his first day. And, you know, and I'll be honest, at the time I couldn't understand, you know, the fact that he'd sat on another child. I think that's what shocked me more, because Grayson doesn't go near kids. He avoids them all. He walks around them and, you know, he doesn't really, you know, I've never seen him interact with other children. So the fact he'd actually gone and sat on a child's lap, I didn't know whether to be happy or not, because I was like, oh, that's progress. And but it bothered me. It bothered me because, you know, it was just such a negative end to what's supposed to be a good, positive start, new start.
That build up for even you as parents, isn't it?
Yeah. So I used the parent app and I emailed and sort of picked away, and then it turns out he'd sat on one child on carpet time. He obviously didn't understand to sit next to the child, whether someone went sit there and point, and he just sat wherever they told him to sit, which, you know, could happen with any child if you're not clear. And he'd also tried to sit on the adults' laps, and I think that was probably more of the issue.
Oh, God forbid. He tried to sit on an adult's lap in the nursery school.
So, so obviously, you know, there was a few things where things were said and it sounded very negative, and then when you sort of picked away at things, actually, you know, it wasn't as negative, or things where I think, well, why didn't you tell me that? You know, you've made it sound like everything's great, and actually that was a problem, and you've not told me, and it's because I've asked questions. And, you know, and the thing is, like, this was my argument with them. They have this parent app and they put pictures up of the children, of what they've done throughout, you know, in their sessions. So I knew what all the other children were doing. I knew all the things they were learning, but I knew nothing about Grayson because he's not often in the photos. So he could be quite clearly, you know, you've got the class and he could be right there, but because he's out of the frame, I don't know where he is. So you know, you start to think things. And I'll be honest, I was that paranoid mum in the first week, because obviously they didn't tell me, you know, about changing him, or, you know, I didn't know if he was eating his snack or drinking. I marked the nappies to see if they changed him, because on the first 2 days they hadn't. And I didn't know if they had set times, and then I sort of dropped it in one of the messages, you know, did he let you change him, you know, because you haven't sort of mentioned it. And if they had come back and said, you know, yes, they had, and I know, like, I would have kicked off. But obviously, you know, I said to Dad, you know, we just see it's all new, and we'll give them the opportunity, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. And obviously, they are better in the sense that what they do now is they message me on the app. So sometimes with a few pictures and a brief update. It's not every day. maybe, once, twice a week. Still, in my opinion, not enough. I think if they can update the parent app each day, they've got 2 minutes to update me. But obviously, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And I am conscious about the relationship between them. I think for me, it's not as positive as the old nursery.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just difference of personalities, or I don't know, I can't put my finger on it. I mean, the teacher, I don't find her approachable. But again, I don't know if it's because she don't like me, or if some people are just, their personalities are.
It really should be about the needs of your child, though.
It was like the second or the third week, I went in for the plan, do, review thing. And obviously I got there. Senko, she's new to role, so obviously, first time I'd met her, go into the room, teacher was a bit late. And obviously already, between me and the teacher, things had been quite, not really brilliant, really. But obviously I brought up the topic of the communication, that, ultimately I need to trust them. I need them to fill in the gaps that Grayson can't do. And I brought up again about the could there be a communication book between them and obviously they weren't keen on the idea at all. And one of the excuses given was, that they had other children to look after, that they didn't have the time. And, I'll be honest, Simone, I'd lost my temper, because for me, I worked in secondary schools, I've worked in education. I'm fully aware that staff have, a lot of responsibility. I am fully aware that they don't get the amount of time that they should get to mark books, to plan lessons, to go to meetings. It's, lots of teachers I've worked with over the years often would take stuff home to do it of an evening, at weekends, during school holidays, and they shouldn't. Your working hours should be that till that, and that's it. But unfortunately, until, there are massive changes within education, this is what they're working with. But to be told, in a meeting with a parent of a child that hasn't got the communication to tell us if there was a problem, that they're basically too busy, that they've got other children to deal with, and not have 2 minutes to write a couple of sentences. I mean, I wasn't asking for an A4 sheet of paper. All I wanted to know was, had he participated in anything? Has he been changed? Did he drink? Did he eat his snack? Anything negative if we needed to know. And it was like I was asking for, the crown of England, really. And obviously when she said that, I lost my temper, and I said, if I who worked in a school could manage communication between, school and home, and myself and other teachers, and plan things, and know all this information about the students I was working with, or go and plan for these interventions, or go and make the resources for whatever student I was with that needed it. If I could do that, and I was working with a lot more than 12 children, because as a TA you're everywhere. You start off with a class and you end up with a year group. If I could do that and never complained, and I got on with it and organised myself better, then why can't they write a couple of sentences? And I even said, it wasn't a case that I'm asking you to do it then and there. I would happily wait until the afternoon if it means you send me a quick email, just giving me an update. And it was like I felt like I was basically being an inconvenience. And the thing is, and my argument will always be, they are parents themselves. They've got their own children. They would want to know about their children. So why would I be any different, And as a parent, whether your child's got additional needs or not, I think it's so important to have good relationships with the settings that your children attend, whether that's a private nursery or, mainstream school, SEND school, secondary, whatever. You need to be on the same page, because ultimately the child is the centre point. Their everything about their education, their happiness, their well-being, they're the ones we're all there for.
Exactly.
So if you're not communicating, or you've not got good, like I've been on the other side of the table when you've got a parent who, doesn't want to work with you, or doesn't agree with certain sanctions, or if there's been an issue, it's the same. I've been in meetings, Simone, where they said, my child don't behave like that at home. Absolutely, because that could happen. Children behave in different ways at home to school. At school they can be absolute angels, and at home there's nothing but problems. Doesn't mean that, you don't take on what that parent's saying, because that is a possibility. And I always think, for the best outcomes, you all have to be on the same page. It's the same with Scarlett. If Scarlett does something wrong in school and I am made aware, she knows I'm made aware. She knows that, I will agree with certain sanctions being put, as long as they're, beneficial. I'm not, I don't agree with sanctions being put in place if, they don't correlate to the crime as such, or if the child, it's no point putting in a sanction in place for a child that doesn't understand sanctions. But she knows I am on the same page as school. We are all in agreement that she needs to do homework each week, that she needs to try her best, that she has to behave in a certain way and be respectful. And if she breaks that, breaks school rules, there may possibly be a sanction at home. If they've done something in school and she's, I know that sometimes the teachers take part of their break away if they haven't worked well. I get that it has to be done, and I also know what Scarlett's like, and know that that's potentially something that she has done. Scarlett's not the best liar. When you ask her about something, you can pretty much tell straight away if she's done it or not. So, I do want to be, I don't want to be that parent that goes up there screaming and shouting and saying, this ain't on, blah, 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 but at the same time, I said to him in that meeting, I will be that parent if I need to be, because ultimately he can't come out and tell me what his day's like. If he comes home and he's quiet and subdued, to me that's unusual for him. If he's not sleeping, he's not a great sleeper, but if it's worse, then I've got to think, well, what's happened in the day for nighttime to be even worse? If he's acting out, if he's lashing out at people, then we have to look at what's happened in the day to lead to that. So obviously, if they're not telling me stuff and I see a negative change in Grayson, then I'm going to associate, well, something bad happened in school. Is he unhappy there? Is he being, picked on? Is he being told off for something that's not his? You think all sorts. You can't help but think all sorts, because they're your kids and they can't tell you themselves. And I think it's a shame, really, because I think that is why probably me and school have got off on the wrong foot. I don't know, like, there's just little things where, I want them to work with me. I want them to share things, because as well, they might be doing something that works really well there, and I'd like that to continue at home, or if I've got a strategy that I know works with us, I want them to be able to try it there, because if it works, it works. It's got to be good, not just for Grayson, but for the other children.
And the thing is, Sam, it's not even, I'm not being biased here, but you've gone in quite open. Do you know how many parents are in denial? And I know it's a whole journey for some, so I'm not making a judgment there. But some of them would be like, when schools are trying to work with them, no, my child's not like this, or they might not even accept a diagnosis even on that level. But you're going in and, like, that's the bare minimum. My child cannot communicate verbally at this stage very well. So you have to be that mouthpiece, the same way we are for our own children.
Yep.
He's been with you for how many hours in the day? Something. When you first told me on the phone, it blew my mind.
Because it's upsetting, because it's like, you know, I'm a mum of 3. With Scarlett, I know I did things wrong when it came to the pathway and how much I pushed for things. You know, I listened to the professionals and I trusted the judgment of certain professionals, and I wish I hadn't done. I wish I'd have listened to my own feelings about things and just gone ahead and did certain things, because now we're in a position where she has struggles and that could have been avoided, and we're getting closer and closer to secondary school. So obviously, you know, that's going to be a massive area for her that I think is going to be a huge struggle. So with Grayson, because obviously we was lucky enough, and I know we were lucky enough, I know from reading reading posts online of parents saying, you know, it took 5 years to get a diagnosis, or it's took 2 years to get an appointment with a paediatrician. I am incredibly lucky at the fact that, you know, for Grayson, it took us 13 months from start to finish to get that referral in with the initial health visitor to getting a diagnosis. I am fully aware. I know obviously some services have been slow and not very consistent, but we're under them.
Yeah.
You know, we are under OT and we are under speech and language. And, you know, although things could be better, it's better than not having any. You know, when you know parents that wait, you know, I think this morning I saw a post saying speech and language in a particular area. She said apparently it's a 2-year wait. You know, that's horrific, absolutely horrific. And I couldn't even imagine how it would be if we had to wait 2 years for someone to come and help with PECs, you know, to give him some sort of voice. It's awful. You know, I mean, well, like I said, we're still in the early days and we've got a long, long way to go. But for him to be able to have that small voice to say, I would like this drink, or I want to play with this particular toy.
And 2 things, it's all about, you know, there's this big emphasis on early intervention.
Yes, and
when you miss that window,
you know, and that's it. With Grayson, I thought I'm doing it different this time round. I'm going to get the help. I'm going to get, you know, all the things put in place, and every step of the way, it feels like a door has been slammed. And yes, and it's exhausting. It is so exhausting. And it's bad because obviously I've got Scarlett and potentially Violet. I mean, that's one thing they've said to me. You know, Grayson is on the spectrum. Scarlett is most likely, you know, that's the tune they're sort of thinking, which I think so, you know. Well, we've got Violet. Who's to say that somewhere down the line she won't end up with an ASD diagnosis? You know, I mean, even Cole says he thinks potentially I'm on the spectrum. And in the beginning, I did laugh, but actually, you know, over the last sort of 2 years, there's things where I look at the kids and I think, why'd you do that? And then actually, I do it myself. And I struggle, like shopping. I say about how stressful it is, but actually, truth be told, I can't stand shopping. You know, I hate it. I get so stressed out walking into Sainsbury's or Asda's because it's busy. There's too many people. And there's lots of things where, you know, actually, I've had these conversations with people and I wouldn't be surprised if I ended up with an A. I wouldn't, because there are things I do that people would, you know, years ago, people would used to say to me, you're being odd. Why are you doing that? And I go, oh, no, I just do. You know, and even now as an adult, there are things that I feel like I relate more to the kids. I understand things so much better. It seems to be like this could actually everything fall into place about the way I am about certain things and why the kids are like, and you know, and if it is, it is. I mean, obviously, you know, adults trying to get a diagnosis probably about 15 years in this country. I don't know.
No, it's not.
You know, it's. But
you know what? You're not the only one to say that. I feel like where there's more awareness now, isn't there? I'm speaking to women in their 40s, 50s. They've all been diagnosed with ADHD because they're saying there's connections with that dyslexia.
Yeah.
And autism, so
it is very, very like I suppose it. I mean, the doctor said to me like, asking about family, and obviously in my family there are the immediate, all my cousins all have a child on the pathway or diagnosed.
Yeah.
Other family members, on my mum's side, it's very, it's a lot. I didn't realise how many people in our family did have autism, until obviously until Grayson and sort of having conversations and, and the thing is that, I with Scarlett, up until sort of a couple of years ago, I didn't actually think she was autistic. I thought she had dyspraxia.
Yeah,
That's what I thought. I really did think.
Yeah.
And then we went to an appointment and they went to me, no. And I was like, really? You sure? Because they went, I would be looking at autism or ADHD.
Sure. I feel like years ago we had this conversation. You were like, no, Simone, they've ruled out autism. No,
at the time they said to me, I think it is because of the way girls present. I think that's what it is, because I didn't really understand. I didn't really understand why there is such a difference between girls and boys. I suppose because it's one thing when you work, in a profession where you come across children, and when you are working with particular children, you know about their own needs rather than. But as a parent, there are things I think I missed with Scarlett. There were things that I was aware that I thought she coped well with. Obviously now I realise actually she was extremely good at masking. And now we're at a point where that mask is starting to slip in school. And I think that is the turning point, because previously, it was no problems, she did things and, it wasn't an issue. Whereas over the last year, certain things have been an issue. And because now school are noticing, I think that has changed the way the professionals look at things. And obviously Grayson has a diagnosis, and he had a diagnosis from very, very early on. And obviously when one of the last ones with Scarlett, the doctor did say, looking at the information, the family history, it does almost seem like there is a genetic possibility with autism, and he wouldn't be surprised. It was the first time in about 18 months that I could literally, stop for a minute and think, and then I plummeted. I did. I crashed hard.